Hey everyone, welcome back. So what we're doing here is really an integration session. We've gone through so much powerful stuff together, and this is our chance to kind of distill it all down into something clear, something potent that you can come back to whenever you need it. So let's jump right into our journey back to the heart of what this is all about: safety, trust, and real healing.
All right, so here's the path we're going to walk today. First up, we're looking at safety as the absolute foundation of love. Then, we'll get into taming that inner chaos we all feel sometimes. After that, we're going to tap into some fierce feminine power. And then, we'll look at how to break those repetitive loops that trauma creates. And finally, it's all about building that resilience and trust from the inside out. Really, each step here is about moving us from fear and back into our own power.
Okay, so let's start with the big one. Section 1, Safety to Foundation of Love. This is the bedrock of connection and vulnerability. And let me just say, this is the most fundamental piece of the puzzle. Safety, it's not a luxury, it's not some optional extra, it is the absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite for any kind of deep, loving connection. It's the sacred ground where we can finally dare to be vulnerable.
And this brings us to this huge central question, one I know every single one of us has wrestled with. Why is it so hard to love? I mean, really, after everything we do, why can it still feel so difficult to truly open ourselves up to another person, to life itself, to the divine?
Well, here's the answer, and it's actually incredibly simple. It's because without safety, there is no trust. And without trust, there's absolutely no connection. It's that simple. See, when our innocent, almost childlike trust gets broken, and for some of us, this feels like a deep God trauma. That wound it convinces us that being open is dangerous. And when that happens, we lose access to the very vulnerability that love absolutely has to have to exist.
All right, next up, taming our inner chaos. We're talking about that dance between order and the unknown. Because that feeling of being unsafe, it flips a switch deep inside us, it activates our most primal survival instincts, and that creates this constant inner tension, right? It's this frantic dance between our desperate need for things to be orderly and predictable, and the simple fact that life is just wild and unpredictable.
So this really maps out our inner world perfectly. Look at this. On one side, you've got control. This is our default when we feel unsafe. We desperately try to impose order, we crave predictability, all because we're reacting out of fear of the unknown. But then, on the other side, you have trust. And trust, wow, that's not about trying to control chaos, it's about learning to dance with it. It's about embracing the unknown and seeing it as this field of pure possibility. It's not a reaction to fear, it's an expression of feeling safe.
And this just brings home the ultimate illusion of control. Some of you remember me sharing this story, right? Me standing on that wall, really testing my own fear. And I just asked the universe out loud, what could possibly happen? And literally, in that exact moment, there was an earthquake. The ground actually shook. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It was just the most visceral, powerful reminder that no matter how much we plan or try to control things, life is fundamentally, and I think beautifully, wild.
Okay, so here's our next big step. Harnessing fierce feminine power, and specifically reclaiming anger as a sacred tool. So if control is just an illusion, what's the real answer? How do we actually create safety? Well, we do it by reclaiming the very emotions we've been taught are bad or negative. We start to see things like anger and even rage not as something uncivilized to be ashamed of, but as sacred, protective, and incredibly powerful tools of the fierce feminine. So let's start with the archetype of Sekhmet. Her name literally means the one who has power. And boy does she. She is the embodiment of divine, protective rage. In the myths, she was sent to bring order to a chaotic world, but her power was so immense that, untempered, it almost became purely destructive. What she represents is that raw, essential power we all need to create boundaries and establish safety. But the key is, it's a force that has to be wielded with awareness.
And then, of course, there's Kali. In her story, she has to defeat this demon where every single drop of its blood that hits the ground creates a clone of itself. So what does she do? She drinks the blood before it can ever touch the ground. This isn't just about destruction. This is fierce, conscious discernment in action. She's literally transmuting what's harmful into a contained, non-destructive force. She's showing us how to handle toxicity without letting it spread everywhere.
Okay, so moving on. We're now at breaking trauma's repetitive loops, or how the past lives in the present. So these amazing archetypes, Sekhmet and Kali, They teach us how to wield this really intense energy. But what happens when that energy gets stuck inside us? Well, that, right there, is the core mechanic of trauma. It's how the past stops being something that happened back then and instead becomes this powerful, invisible lens that colors our entire reality right now.
So let's break down this loop. It's pretty straightforward, really. First, some kind of intense experience happens, and for whatever reason, it remains incompletely processed. Step 3, it creates a kind of frozen imprint in the body. This isn't just a memory, it's a physical sensation of fear. And then, that imprint becomes a distorted lens. So finally, we see and react to the world through that lens. We're seeing threats everywhere, we're reacting to today as if it were yesterday, and that's how we get stuck, repeating the same painful patterns and just wondering, why on earth does this keep happening to me?
Okay, this brings us to the really good part, building resilience and trust. This is your path from reactivity to response. So the big question is, how do we break this loop? How do we begin to thaw that frozen imprint in our bodies? The answer is with tools. We need practical tools that shift us from just automatically reacting to the past to consciously responding in the present. This is exactly how we build true, lasting resilience.
So here it is. This is your toolkit for the path. First up, radical acceptance. This is huge. When you release that pressure to fix yourself, you actually allow the stuck energy to just dissolve. Second, conscious discernment. This is about getting really clear on the difference between a healthy boundary that serves you and a rigid, fear-based rule that traps you. Third, self-regulation. A simple, powerful practice like the 20 connected breaths can literally calm your nervous system in moments. And finally, and this one is so important, the power of Sangha, our community. Never ever forget the strength we get just from being witnessed, from knowing we are not alone in this.
And, ultimately, this is what we're aiming for. Listen to this beautiful quote from Hafiz. "The sun never says to the earth, 'You owe me.' Imagine a love like that. It lights up the whole sky." I mean, wow. The goal is to cultivate such a deep sense of inner safety and fullness that our love just becomes like that, unconditional. It's not giving to get something back, it just shines because that's its nature. It's not an effort, it's an overflow. And that's the kind of love that becomes possible when we feel truly, deeply safe in ourselves.
So I want to leave you with this one final thought. Remember that story of the spider? How it was trapped inside a circle on the ground that it could have easily just walked over? We all do that. We all live inside these invisible lines that were drawn by our past fears. The second that spider chose to step over the line, it was free. So my question for you for today is this. What invisible line, what old limitation are you going to choose to breathe through and step over today? Thank you.